Hello everybody and welcome to Megomuseum's Mint Off Card. I am Brian, your host, and this week we're going to look some more at Mego's Wave 19. In particular, their latest releases for Mego's Star Trek, the original series, or as I like to call it, Star Trek. When Mego came back in 2018, I had one rule. I would buy anything Star Trek, the original series, that wasn't a reproduction of an original Mego. I have no use for reproductions of characters I already own, especially the Star Trek line, because a lot of them are my childhood Star Trek figures, and there's no replacing them. Now, I do understand that Mego did make a Talosian and an Andorian in their original Star Trek Aliens line. However, these are much more screen accurate, and in the case of Andorian, it's a different character and actually writing a faux pas Mego made in the past, but I'll get into that. So in terms of the packaging, there's not a lot I can say for the front anyways, because it's the same Paramount style guide artwork that Mego and Playmates had to use in the last couple of years, and well, I actually really like it compared to what we've had before. I personally long for the day of, Mego figures on card backs that look like James Blish novels, if you know what I mean. But at the very least, it's colorful and pops a bit. Let's turn around to the back, where I'm much more impressed with the packaging. The backs of the cards kind of pop a bit, and it's really nice. The characters kind of stick out, and I do love the photography. Of course, we've got that picture of Marty Abrams with the Mego spiel. That is a vintage picture now. And then, of course, we have credits, and let's go through those, because those are always kind of fun. On the paint for both figures, we have Tom King, who is no stranger to the Megomuseum forums. On sculptor duty for the Andorian ambassador, we have Mr. James Brady, another Mego customizer I knew through the Megomuseum and fellow Libra. On the Talosian, the head sculpt is done by Andrew Kovalt, who should be no stranger to Mego fans, and guess where I know him from? The seamstress on the Talosian was Rachel Baker. She's done a ton of Mego figures over the years. And on the Andorian ambassador, it is Pandora Taggart, someone I actually don't know. That is one thing I actually admire about Mego, is they have gone and hired fans, not only of Mego, but of Star Trek, to create these. And the passion shines through. These people are living a dream. They get to see their work on the shelves, and they also put their heart into it. And I'm going to go through it a little bit, but you can see the care that's been put into these characters. So without further ado, let's beam these guys out of their cardboard and plastic coffins and do a silly montage as usual. Hang tight. So there you have it. We have the Andorian Ambassador and Talosian from Mego Corp's Wave 19, Star Trek the original series. I'll give you my thoughts, and I'm going to start with the Talosian. First of all, the head sculpt and the paint apps just rock on this figure. Now, it's not a squishy head anymore. That's a solid piece of plastic, which allows for a lot more detail. And unlike rotational molding, I haven't seen one that kind of distorted in any way. It seems to keep the sculpt on point. The one drawback is physics, as his head is rather heavy, and he will fall over if you don't pose him in the right way. Which, to paraphrase Ed Wood, would be a real-life struggle for a man with a head this big. I think the medallion is perfectly Mego and an awesome touch. Now, there's a little bit of glue or sewing done there, and I'm assuming that's so it didn't flop around in the packaging. And the outfit itself, man, this textile is amazing. It feels really cool. It feels space age. It's a bit thin, so you can kind of see through it, but the way the light shimmers off of it is absolutely perfect and really adds to the whole figure's aesthetic. My one issue with this figure is he is 8 inches tall. The Talosians were largely played by women, and that was to give them kind of a frailer, smaller appearance. In fact, one Mego collector on the museum said his mother-in-law played one of these characters many years ago. I thought it was a style guide thing, but it just turns out Mego doesn't have a smaller bandless body yet, and I guess the child body didn't really work for it. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'll try and get some clarification. Then I looked up like the original Playmates Talosian, where that dude looks like he's been lifting. It's amazing. So this looks pretty good by comparison. Speaking of comparisons, if you put him next to the original Mego Talos, I think they're both great. I think the head sculpt for the original is Mego firing at its best cylinders at the time. Who knows what happened with the clown suit? But back in that day, Star Trek was a relatively new show, popular with kids, so it really didn't seem to matter to the folks at Mego if it was screen accurate or not. Moving on to the Andorian Ambassador, I can't tell you how smitten I am with this head sculpt. James has never turned in a bad one in my opinion, but wow, I love the personality of this. And for those that don't know, this is actor Reggie Nalder, a very distinct looking Austrian character actor who largely did a lot of horror and science fiction. You may know him best as Kurt Barlow from the TV miniseries Salem's Lot. You have him to welcome for those nightmares. And this head sculpt is a wonderful portrait. Getting on to the soft goods, we have the traditional Andorian tunic and then the underclothes. And I love this original Mego Andorian boots molded in black, which is great. There's a fun anecdote about this tunic. It got around in Hollywood, most famously as part of the costuming for John Wayne's terribly miscast portrayal of Genghis Khan in the movie we'd all like to forget, The Conqueror. I can't see a lot of people rushing to make those customs, but what do I know? Now, the original Mego Star Trek Aliens Andorian was as screen accurate as it got in 1976, and it's a pretty good approximation. I don't understand where the gloves come from, but there's some real issues with this character. Now, this Andorian is based on a character from the episode Journey to Babel, which is the same one that the Andorian Ambassador is in. But if you guys remember that story, it turns out this guy they based it on was not an Andorian, but an Orion spy. So we got an Andorian figure, but he technically wasn't an Andorian, if you get my drift. So this kind of rectifies that. The other issue with the original Mego Andorian is they kind of made him gray. He looks more like a character from Black Star to me than an Andorian, which were more of like a powder blue. Now that brings me to my one quibble with this, is he is a really dark blue. He needed to be taken down a shade, I think. And I asked Mego why that was, and the answer I got surprised me. I thought it would have been a style guide thing. Sometimes style guides are wrong. I've actually dealt with that, being a geek and saying, that's the wrong color. Well, no, it's what the style guide says. And some of these people aren't fans, but they are in charge. However, that's not the case. What happened here was basically a quick correct. The factory had molded the bodies in the wrong color. They were too dark blue, and putting the accurately painted head on that dark blue body would be too discordant, so they made a running change and made him a little darker. I'd rather him too blue than not enough, but yeah, it's a little thing I was curious about, and if you were, I hope that answers your question. So as I close, I would like to know, what Star Trek character would you like in Wave 19? Me personally, Dr. Severin. Oh my goodness, yes. However, you probably like good Star Trek episodes, so let me know in the comments here, or in our Facebook group Megomania, or at the Megomuseum forums. Also wanted to mention I have a new issue of Toyventures magazine. This issue does feature content about Mego Planet of the Apes, and if you order now, you can get a free inflatable monster while supplies last. Thanks for looking. The link is in the description. That's all for this week, folks. Hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, be well and buy what you like. Cheers.